Hey everyone, it's Michelle at Resonant Essentials, and with me today for our interview is the one and only beautiful, spirited brother Francis Revels Bey. Hi, brother Francis, how's it going?
Good morning. I'm doing all right. I'm fine. I'm excited to be here. Got my
Well,
smile on.
while you're not a weekly practitioner at Resident Essentials, you are a very supportive member of our team. So I want people to know that the reason that we're interviewing you is that you do so much in the way of support for Resident Essentials and all the practitioners that we just dearly love having your energy intermixed. And besides, you're the token male psychic and medium.
Wow.
The token male. How do you like being the token male? Huh?
Yeah. That's cool.
All those all those cool women hanging out with us.
Yep. But I'm perfect gentleman.
You are. Thank you so much for all your support. You were actually one of the ones got me. You were the one that you gave me a reading, and you picked right up on what Spirit had told me to do to create Resonant Essentials when you were doing a stand-up gallery night at Mocha.
Right.
Remember that? I
Yep.
mean,
2015.
what you're gonna do, you need to get going doing it before somebody tries to take it over because they like your idea and they want to do it, but no one's going to be able to do it like you do it. And with the integrity. And I thought, wow, he's picked right up on that, and that support from that moment has never wavered. Thank you.
Wow. You're welcome. You're welcome.
So I know a bit of your history, but I want to take you back to Long Island because you're not native New Mexican, and you pretty much lost that New York accent, that
Yes.
island accent. So people don't really realize that you're from back east.
Yes. I'm from Long Island. Long
And
Island, New York.
you actually say Long Island, making sure the G is in there because the rest of us go Long Island and it kind of just blurs into one word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well,
Kind of started.
I used to hear things like bees and hornet's nest would sound like in my mind like an airplane bomber or something like that. And one evening, going off to sleep at 8 years old, I woke up the next day and barged into my parents' room without knocking.
Get in trouble?
Almost. My dad was ready to snatch me up, but I ran into the room, and when I was younger, I stuttered. So I said, "Mom, I had a dream." And so she said, "Well, what kind of dream? What happened?" And I explained that I was at a college campus playing volleyball, and I met this professor that kind of reminded me of Harpo Marx. And I felt like I belonged there. And then she told me that's not a dream, it's called a vision. And then I stuttered and asked, "Well, what's the vision?" And she said, "That's something that you're actually going to live out. Right now, just enjoy your childhood. Don't think about it." But I used to spend every Saturday, WABC during the college season, watching the college football games, looking for the stone white gem, and I never would see it. And then after graduating from high school, one of the guidance counselors invited all of the parents that were having their kids weren't going off to the colleges, they were going to community colleges, and they wanted to give them a chance to go into an actual college. All you have to do is write an essay, didn't have to take a test. So it was this woman by the name of Mrs. Chandler or Mrs. Chambers and Mr. Tillman, who was the actual original guidance counselor. They threw a cookout. They invited this lady down from Bard College, and all the parents were there with the kids. And my mother pushed me outside. She says, "I taught you how to do something. So go find us a seat. And so I put my hands out, I felt warm, I felt cool. Like, oh, Mama's going to sit to the left. I'm going to sit here, but I'm not supposed to sit in the seat next to me to the right. And finally, the woman from the college, she was one of the admissions officers, came and sat in the seat. And when she pulled out the student handbook, I saw the gymnasium. And I immediately elbowed my mom in the ribs. And she said, be quiet. You don't want anybody to know that you know something. Just listen. And from that day on, I wound up going to college, upstate New York, where the rest of my psychic experiences unfolded, which also included meeting that professor.
Well, I know that a little bit of your background, but I don't think anybody really knows how widely diverse you are in your psychic and mediumship tools. I know that you talk a lot about getting messages from your grandmother and your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Don't realize how much you've actually trained and received that training, how in depth you went into that training. It's something that a lot of people realize is an important aspect as intuitives is to get as great a foundation in things as possible. So what was your first endeavor? What did you first go into to start doing readings and things like that?
Well, right after college, during the summer, staying with an uncle in New Jersey, one of my mom's younger brothers, and I wanted to study astrology. And we happened to go to a big flea market, outdoor place. He went grocery shopping, and I saw these old books lined up on a table. And the guy called me over and said, every book on this table is 25 cents. Really? Well, I said, that's right up my alley. So I went down and I found a book on astrology. It was really thick, like a big old-fashioned dictionary. But I didn't read through it. So when I got it home, I was like, what? I got to do math. I'm not good at math. I don't even know what they're talking about. So the following Saturday, we went back there again. The guy said, how did you like that book? I said, I'm going to keep it, but it makes no sense. So he says, well, we got some other books here. And I found a book. It was called Kiro's Book of Numbers. And that stood out in my mind, Kiro's Book of Numbers. And when I opened it up and read something about me, I said, yeah, baby, this is it. I want this book. So I read that book so many times, the pages were falling out. And then I found another book like it, and a book by Kevin Avery, who was supposed to have been the numerologist to the stars in Hollywood. And he was a guy that helped Dionne Warwick redo her name just by adding a letter onto Warwick. And then her career, frequency opened up. So that was back in the summer of 1974. And I did as much as I could, but on my own. But the real test came when I went up to an old bookstore that's no longer in Harlem. They used to call it the UCLA of Harlem, which is meaning the university at the corner of Lenox Avenue and West 125th Street. And up there, that's the rough crowd. So I walked into the
Right.
store and I said, I'm looking for a numerology buddy. And they said, oh, there's a flyer over there. I picked up the flyer. The guy's name was Lloyd Strayhorn. We got together. I took 4 successive Saturday classes with him. And I kept bringing in a little bowling bag worth of handwritten charts. And finally, he wanted to see what was in that bag. And then he was just excited. And through him and the store owner, I became the second popular student the following summer teaching beginner's numerology.
Wow.
So,
That's how you started in numerology because you just did a class for us on numerology.
yeah, well, that was for a rough crowd. You had to know your stuff. You just couldn't spit out anything. You had to back it up with knowledge.
Well, and I've dabbled. I've done my own chart and my family's chart in numerology. What I have a tendency of doing is that I pull up their numbers, their life path, their soul urge, all the different faucets that of the, but I do more of an intuitive once I get that number.
Right.
From there, a little bit more intuitive, not as exacting a science as what you do, because you've studied and trained, so you know so much more about how the numbers intermix.
Right.
So let me ask you, just to give a little sample. I told you that I can give you my numbers, like my life expression is a 3, but my life path is a 22, and my soul urge is a 9. What would you tell me?
Okay, well, there's, we go with different terms. So is your life path all the numbers that you add up to, meaning the birth month, day, and year?
Yeah, that's my life path.
Okay, and you said it was a 3?
No, it's a 22.
22. Okay, so you have the master number 22. Well, traditional wise, they say that's the grand architect. That's the person who can take someone's dreams and crystallize them, so you're not just dreaming, you're making the dream work. But being involved with numerology so long, I also reduce it anyway. So 22 becomes 4. Or actually, when you say it, you say 22, 4. That's 3 different numbers. So 20, the root compound number, is you're here to transform things, regenerate ideas, rebirth something. Okay. Then the 2 is good for the gift of partnership and dealing with details. And then the 4 is divine order versus chaos.
Are you telling me
and
I
you
don't
have
see
both.
for a reason?
Yeah, so you'll have both to deal with, but you'll be comfortable with both. The nature of the 4, though, is, and this is just by experience over the years, a lot of people who have the 4 as a birthday number, they're geniuses. Now, they may not look like a genius to anybody, but they can figure stuff out. And usually they're the ones who think outside the box. So everybody tells you as a child, play in the sand pit. Now you see the bigger picture. That's where you're headed.
Well, so if somebody were to want to get a reading from you with numerology, this is the kind of stuff that you would be giving them.
Yeah. And also, like yourself, over the years, I know the technical side. When I teach it to people, I can give them the technical side, but I also go what my spirit self is telling me to tell people. So often when people have gotten mini charts, forecasts, and full charts, they're also getting information from Grandma Charlotte, Angel of Grace, Mother of Grace. They're like spitting stuff in there, I've got a little bit that in my remembrance of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, popping little things in there, and I say it, So it's a different kind of a chart. It's just not numerology. It's covering a lot of bases.
So what would a full chart cost?
A lot of money.
Hey man, go ahead and tell everyone.
Okay. A full chart is $325. It gets, I type it up. It takes about 8 weeks to do because the first week or so, I'm in meditation on those numbers. I go into meditation with the letters, what the letters sound like, what those vowels sound like, or paired up with consonants, what it feels like. And then I go into the numbers. And then what I do, I have a basic template that I'll set up. And then I'll just go into the computer and I'll put keywords or phrases. And that's all that I do. And then I shut it down and I go on and do something else. And then it starts to come to me.
Okay, so letting people understand how important I know that math is the vibration of the universe.
Yes.
It has a mathematical equation. And I know, having hung out with you, how often you go, oh, that license plate is my mother's birthday.
Right.
Oh, this is that. And you relate to numbers constantly. Numbers always, so I think that also makes a very good numerologist for somebody to be that aware. But it really helps people in so many aspects. Can you talk to how getting their full chart done would help them with their life, their choices?
Sure. Sure. There's, every number, a day that a person is born on, there's certain attributes, there's strengths and weaknesses. That's just in the date of birth alone. There's also occupations that go with your life path or destiny number and the calendar day that you're born on. There's also what they call cycles that are happening every 29 years, 28 to 29 years in the first two cycles of your birth month and your birthday, and then your birth year. That's the longest cycle. There's a lot of stuff there. When I first do the chart, I work on the name first to get that out the way with. And your vowels can tell you something. The first name tells you something. The first name is unique because we call that your key, meaning that's the part that unlocks you and lets you free from your family name.
So what
So,
in the first name, not the middle name?
mm-hmm.
What if they don't go by their first name, but they go by their middle name?
Well, then their middle name would take over. But when we do a full chart, getting the middle name in there, the middle name is considered like the bridge. So it's a transitional point that takes you from the vibration of your family name and through the years, and then you wind up eventually where your first name is. But if now I use the Chaldean system, which is different from the modern system, modern Pythagorean. I use the modern Chaldean, and the reason for that is it has a tendency to pull out numbers that are connected somewhere to your astrological planet, ruling planet, and like your ruling day sometimes. So it's a lot of fun. And when I teach it, I tell people don't take yourself seriously. I've I've done numerous calculations and then review it and find like, oh my God, I gave an interpretation for a completely different number. Now what do I do after I've gone through all of this? But that's just a sign from the universe within inside yourself that that person was supposed to get that information. So it's not so much when we see the number on the paper, it's something else that's going on. So the frequency is on the paper, but it's in you. It's in the name of the person and how you're perceiving it.
So let me ask you, because we're all in shelter in place and we've got this great big happening going on in regards to coming out to work. Our lives are kind of changed. Could you, and I know in astrology they do progressives. Do you do
Mm-hmm.
along similar lines for numerology about where this is affecting them and where their numbers may need some nurturing and care versus take advantage in this general area?
Yeah, well, there's something in numerology where you can look at the universal year, the universal month, the universal day, the personal year for yourself, personal month, and personal day number of wherever you fall at in. So there's a lot of things that you could pull out. You can get really particular and take it right down to the time, but you don't need to do that. In most cases, you can see what it is to me, numerology is the shorthand of astrology.
Right.
But in reality, if I was like my good friend Lloyd Strayhorn, he was first an astrologer, then he became a numerologist. So he's called an astronumerologist because he's working out of both at the same time. He
Wow.
can tell you what house, the moon, the angle, and still talk numbers inside of that at the same time.
See, now that would make my head spin because I do not like math.
Well,
I ditched math my entire junior high, high school. As much as I could get out of that class, I was out.
mm-hmm.
Even though I can be extremely left brain when I need to, math is not one of the ones that. It's not that I couldn't have done it; it's that it just well, bored me to tears. But I did
Mm-hmm.
enjoy numerology. Um, So there you go. I enjoy knowing that. So tell us a little bit more about some of the other tools and the other things you teach, and what else do you do?
Okay, well, after the numerology, I was also doing dream analysis for a very long time. And the interesting factor, because I was an art major in college, so when someone would describe their dream to me, is like I was in the dream with them. And I could say, like, well, you left this out, you left that out, you left this out. And those little items are just as important. I also used to teach back in New York City. I taught a class called Dreaming for Success, how you could take your dream, but you had to understand what lucid dreaming was. And I used to have a lot of those. And lucid dreaming is you're still dreaming, but you consciously are awake in the dream and you realize there's certain things that are going on in the dream that don't happen in the real world.
Right, right.
So, and then from there, I was also doing a handwriting analysis for a very long time. I never became certified for it, but I understood that one of my clients used my report in a domestic violence situation,
Oh,
and it got the person who was bothering her arrested, and also for forging her name. I'm able to some degree. Sometimes I could tell if you're right-handed or left-handed without watching you write. There's a certain way that left-handed people write. Most left-handed people are different from right-handed people. I also realized I could pick up on psychometry, because what I would do is I would take the page and turn it over and then read the energy from the back, and I would get good information.
well, there you go. So you're multi-talented.
And I also do tarot, taught classes in tarot,
Well,
meditation, how to connect with your spirit guides, and an
I
assortment of
really
things.
think that you should be taking my job.
No, I don't want your job. I have enough. Give an example. My day yesterday started off with one of my spiritual daughters, who is, I think it's pronounced Daejeon, South Korea, and she needed an emergency reading about something. And my day started yesterday at 4 a.m. in the morning, reading her, and then taking a break, and then I had a 9 a.m. reading, and then taking a break, I had a couple other readings. And the 9 a.m. reading was nice too, because this lady's name was Nusrat Fatima. And she was referred to me from one of my other spiritual daughters in New Jersey. And the whole time I was talking to her, because when I do readings, I don't have to use tarot anymore. The past 10 years, I do a meditation, and through myself, I get 5 or 6 symbols, and I write the symbols down, and then I interpret them in reverse. And usually it matches what's going on with the person. So in her reading, I kept telling her she had very high energy, very high spirit, and has a lot of faith. And in the middle, I said, "What does your name Nusrat mean?" She started laughing. I said, "What's funny?" She says, "Nusrat means high spirit. And you told me that earlier, that I have a high
I'm so
spirit."
sorry. Hang on.
Yay. See, they wanted to come in. They know I'm on.
Well, I know you had an affinity with my Rosie girl, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I just got Max left, and I partnered him up with Phoebe, little
Mm.
Bunny, and you haven't gotten a chance to meet her since we're stay-at-home orders. But this summer we'll have you come over, and we'll have a barbecue on the patio.
Oh, that'll be nice. It'll
Yeah,
really be nice.
I know, right? Get out in the
Mm-hmm.
sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
So I apologize for the rude interruption. Um, you also are a prolific writer, and you've written 3 books. I think you're on your fourth book.
Yeah, I'm writing book number 4 and book number 5. We're just trying to figure out how many chapters, or just leave it at the number of chapters that is, and then maybe fill them out more.
Well, I know that the first book, Dancing with Divine Grace, I have.
Dancing in the Light of Divine Grace.
Yeah, there you go. I know. I'm sorry. I should have had the book sitting in front of me, and so I apologize. Dancing in the Light of Divine Grace.
Right.
And that was your humble beginnings, and yet you
Yes.
some books with your uh, connection with Akhenaten and Nefertiti.
Right. The wisdom of Akhenaten as I am. And this is a book that came to me. I didn't even know I was going to write it. And his essence came to me in 2006. And I didn't have a clue who this tall, dark-skinned man was walking through a wall and then looking at me, and then just kept walking, and then he was popping up in dreams. And one day I was at my sister Vernell's house when we lived in New Jersey, and it was thundering and lightning out. I had this little song that I used to call his vibration. And I would say, "Who's that knocking at your door? Akhenaten. Who's that ringing your bell? Akhenaten." So I was singing this during the electrical storm, and all of a sudden, I think the lights in her house flashed out. And when I turned around, because we were in the bedroom watching TV, her, the dog that she had, her husband at that time, and William were on the other side of the room looking at me. If you do that one more time, he's going to reach down through the ceiling and snatch you out. So it took me 3 months. It was what I remembered. I don't call it anyone else's remembrance. It's my remembrance of being with him, understanding him, and being taught in his temple, along with him and Nefertiti. And it's 13 chapters. It took 3 months. And then when I was done, all of a sudden around New Year's, I had a dream, and Nefertiti barged in, and she gave me a tongue lashing. And she says, "What is this, just guys' night or something?" She says, "I have something to say too, where you were involved with me, some other teachings." So, and she said it was like a gift, and that struck out. So the book is called The Gift, which is the wisdom of Nefertiti as I am. And I am means the I am presence inside yourself. So what the Nefertiti book talks about, it doesn't talk about any of the things that happened to him, between him and the Imun priesthood. It talks about what happened inside the temple, how they taught. They actually used a lot of crystals. They used selenite back then too, and they would mix it with other things and the water, and they put it inside the pyramids so it could have a strong attraction.
Maybe a lot of people don't know this, but you've taught quite a few people about selenite.
Mm-hmm.
You are well versed in stone lore, stone and crystal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
another one of your little side travels of study that you have engrossed yourself in, because you
Yeah,
don't take it lightly. I want people to understand when you
yeah,
when you go into it, you immerse yourself into it. So you know
yes,
a bit about selenite and have taught quite a few of us here in Albuquerque about it, haven't you?
yes, yes. Selenite is a very energetic stone. It's an angelic stone. I found my selenite back in the 80s at a psychic fair. Out of all the gems that was on a table, this one little piece looked like a combination of a chieftain and an eagle when you held it in your hand.
Wow.
And I had done so well that day at the fair. I made a lot of money, and this poor lady had made a dime with all of these beautiful gems, on her table, like a treasure trove. And so I gave her, I really didn't buy anything. I just felt from my heart that she needed some seed money. So I folded up $40 from what I made, and I gave it to her. And she ran over the table and she hugged me and picked me up and shook me like a rag doll. And she said, "You could have anything on the table. Just pick one item." And that stood out. She said, "That's selenite." She said, "I couldn't find that all day for somebody, so it arrived for you. It's meant for you to have." And from that day forward, that was in 1994, I also was teaching myself how to do out of body experiences, and that's a whole nother story to itself. And I was teaching myself how to pull in higher frequencies. I had a little chip of moldavite that I would hold with that selenite piece, and then I would go in and start pulling information. And so I realized that I had a very strong bond with selenite, that I would sleep with it. I had a back problem where the lower part of my back hurt a lot. And I just remembered, okay, it's very fragile. So I'll put it between two pillows and then I'll lean up against it. And I did that for about 3 or 4 weeks and I was standing straighter. So then I realized, okay, this works, gives you flexibility. It makes your skin cleaner. And not being a holistic person, I said, I wonder if this element, some trace element, is in the body that's almost spelled like the word selenite. So I went online, went to the library, looked, and I found it. It's called selenium. That's the trace mineral connected to selenite. And selenium in your body does a lot of things. It will help build your immune system. It keeps the whole body flexible from the inside out. So I started working. I even assisted a Cochiti shaman several years ago. He was working on one of his drums he was making, and the buzzsaw jumped out, and he lost control. The flat blade hit him in his ribs and in his shins. And
Ouch.
he called my sister up, and he says, "I don't know how it's going to heal." And she says, "You need to speak to my big brother." I'll get the two of you together. So I called him. I prayed for him using decrees and affirmative prayers. And I said, but I have one more thing I have to do. And I have to meet you at her house. And when I got there, I did some Tai Chi movements around him to set the vibration up. And then I took out my selenite wand, which is about 14 inches long and about this thick. And I blew through it and I pressed it on his ribs, and him and I blended together. Then I moved it to his shins. 3 weeks later, he went to the Indian hospital out there, and the doctor told him, he says, something is, I don't know. And he said, what? He said, when you came in here, you had fractured ribs and fractured chin. There's no way in the world that they heal up that fast in 3 weeks. He said, but if I show you this, there's a little outline of something that was over your ribs. It's big. What's that? And he knew not to say anything. I told him, don't tell anybody. I don't need the credit. We're just conduits for this stuff. And so, yeah, I have a
Absolutely.
lot of selenite in my house.
Well, I know you've got quite a few um, of the intuitives around town about it. You were really instrumental in a lot of the various things that you do, and being in the forefront as you calmly and quietly came forward. The first time I had heard of you at Mocamug with Susan Grayson,
Mm-hmm.
her husband Bill, having that night of remembrance. Unfortunately, this stay-at-home order is had interrupted. You were supposed to, within days,
Yes.
have a night of remembrance. I want everyone to know, and I want you to know, that when we start opening up in June, we're going to be starting a little bit of opening up here in the next couple of weeks. But I want to get that night of remembrance up. We're going to have to, of course, have it. We have a huge room, but I've got to get out and figure out my occupancy options. And
Right.
maybe walking a lot that night because there's going to be 6 feet in between people.
Oh, I've done that before. No problem.
And we'll have you back in to do that. Maybe we can arrange something for the end of May. I'm trying to struggle and do stuff, and we're trying to get uh, partitions made so we can do a psychic fair, and we want you to come and participate because you're such a love. Um, Tell me, there's something new that you do now that you've been doing at the psychic fair. How
Mm-hmm.
did that little gift pop up?
Well, that little gift, of course, popped up through you. Last year, I had the pleasure of having my brother and his wife and their youngest daughter. My brother and his wife live on Long Island, and their youngest daughter, Amira, and her family live in Oakland, California. And I had picked up on Amira that they were planning to come here. So I kind of called her and said, "When you coming?" And they said, "Okay, we're going to come the last week of March." And so my brother got a chance to play. He's a drummer, jazz drummer, and he played at one place called B2B, which you had told me about. And he played at it with Eric Owens and a few other locals. And then one of the guitar players told him they needed an extra drummer at this place called something of the brewery off of Montgomery. And so he had invited you, and we were there. And in the middle of nowhere, you said, "You're going to do drawings." And I said, "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." But when I got home and did a meditation in front of my altar, Mother Grace steps through and says, "You're going to do those drawings. And I don't want to hear anything else. Got it?" And I said, "That's it." "All right."
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes, yes,
The
yes.
two power forces
So,
of fire in your world.
fire. So I call it Celestial I Am Portraits. I could have called it anything, but that seemed to stand out the strongest. And I'm glad that I did it, because I think that following month, someone else that we know mutually, who's a Center of Living spiritual minister, he asked for one, and he was the first one I did using Skype. "Oh, that's yours." "Yes, yes."
I
So
haven't got
he's,
it in I have to find where I put the frame.
yeah. And what happens, that's done with colored pencils. So it's just done with a set of colored pencils. I'm not trying to draw the person. I just see things in the aura, and so many things are coming through that they change often. So you could start drawing, let's say, a unicorn, and all of a sudden it's got to be a cat, or it's a cat that looks like a bear.
No,
It
no,
just keeps
and
changing.
this is why I tell people going and having your chakras balanced is silly, because thoughts change the open and closed, I should say, positive and negative flow of your chakras. And
Mm-hmm.
the auric field does the same thing because it's all thought driven. I'm
Yeah.
talking about that in my summit um, talk coming up. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I
Mm-hmm.
have my celestial I am, and I got a great reading that went along with it.
Yeah, you get a reading with it.
My world was going to change, and I would be working on a different level. I'm not sure I'm ready, and I didn't know. And you know what? You were,
Mm-hmm.
because my work has totally changed.
Yeah. So yes, people get readings with them at the same time. Again, I'm not trying to draw them first. I'm just trying to feel what kind of colors that I'm supposed to be using. And it actually works out. I remember at one of the fairs, there was a young man that came with his wife, because I did his wife at the Pagan Festival. And I did about, I think, 25 of them at the Pagan Festival. And it caught wind that I was doing it at your place for the psychic fair. So this young lady brought her husband, and while I was sitting down, drawing, and every now and then I draw his beard and his mustache and his eyes and his hat, I said, "I'm just going to put these symbols in here." And I started putting the symbols in, and I showed it to him. He said, "Oh my God, I do play keyboards, I do play guitar, and I do play drums." It showed up. So
Well,
it's a lot of work.
you also don't do couples, because you did my business partner Tina and her husband
Yes.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get a
Sometimes you get
blending of
one.
theirs, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you get one face, sometimes you get two. Um, well, like Jim Hildebrand and Tracy Whitted, they actually had three faces. It was two profiles merging to make one. And you actually see the profile faces first.
Oh,
Then you see them.
so you're drawing sci-fi.
Yeah, yeah, it's
I'm just kidding.
but I am an artist, and I've been waiting for an opportunity to draw or paint something different, so people get a gist of some of my paintings that are sitting around, of people playing bass guitar and stand-up bass, and on this side of me I have something that represents Jimi Hendrix. I have some landscapes in here, but there is a project coming up, and since we're inside, I have plenty of time and no excuse. I'm going to be mixed media work with crystals and shells and acrylic painting on canvas, creating some very interesting faces. So it's called Eye of the Spirit is my collection. But when I start putting those gems and things, that's called gemsaics.
Oh,
And so,
cool.
yeah, we're going to get
So
into some three-dimensional heads too.
if somebody wanted to get a reading from you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, since I'm homebound and I work from home all the time, I don't get cabin fever because I'm here. They could email me at iam.circleofgrace1@gmail.com. When I get that email, I will send them the prices. My prices right now for since 2009 are 30 minutes is $100, 140 for 45 minutes, and $200 for an hour. Now, if I happen to go over the time, if I go over the time, there's no extra charge. So that means if someone came for a half-hour reading in spirit and my ancestors said, we got to go a little longer, I'm not going to bump them up to the next price. It is,
So they
100.
need to sit down, shut up, and hear what you have to say and ask questions after instead of interrupting in the middle of the reading.
Well, what in each one of the readings, if it's a half-hour reading, 20 minutes, I'm doing the talking and the reading, and then I save 10 minutes for the questions and answers in there so they can get more information. So if it's like, an hour, you're gonna hear me ramble on for the first 45, 50 minutes, and then there's plenty of room for questions and answers.
Well, I want you to be sure to keep that opportunity open for people. So, want everyone who is interested in your night of remembrance, because I will tell you, I'm going to brag a little bit about your night of remembrance. The first time that I came, and I'm telling people this because not everybody does this work. And I do this work, and I know you do this work, but I needed clarity from spirit in the aspect of, am I nuts? Because they were impressing me to start Resonant Essentials. I already, I thought, involved in another path, and I was being brought back into this world. Many people don't realize that I've been in this world for as long as I have, because it was something I kind of kept to myself and the people I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
However, you give people their gifts. I've noticed every time they're the first time that they come in for a night of remembrance, it is filled with their gifts and their possibilities. And
Mm-hmm.
it's up to them to make it manifest. And that's something I do. So I know I recognized it. It was such a blessing to me to have you validate me, not just as a practitioner, but the work that I was to do, because I had already been getting these messages that I was supposed to do it. And you kind of, you're like,
Yeah,
see,
we
really? I'm
hesitate.
not making this up. Well, sure, you hesitate because you're thinking, gosh, it's a pretty big endeavor to open up another business when you were already retired. It was a whole new sidetrack, but you were like, no, this is who you are, and this is your gifts, and this is what you will be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I want people to understand how valuable it's not just about what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years. Your readings often begin with, this is the essence of your gifts in this lifetime, which is really important for people who are looking to progress in the way of spirit. So I'm going to tell everyone, if you're interested in getting in on his night of a remembrance, to make sure that they check back with the Facebook page, Resident Essentials, so that they know it's scheduled. It is going to be on a first come, first served basis. They're going to have to
Yes.
make reservations because um, we're we're going to be holding things on limited quantity for a while, and I want everybody who hasn't experienced you yet to think about coming down. So they need to either get on your email list, get on Resident Essentials email list, or check our Facebook pages.
Right.
So is there anything else, my dear, you would like to share, my brother?
Well, I always used to say that I'm not a weekend warrior. This is a full-time thing for me, and it has been for over 40 years. So people always ask, well, how long have you been doing it? And I always used to make a joke if it was a younger person asking me that question. I said, well, you weren't born yet when I got started. So on July the 2nd, 1974 is when I began the journey officially. So I'm starting my 46th year.
July the 2nd, what year?
I started July the 2nd, 1974, 1 month after college graduation. And, my mother had a lot to do with before she passed away. She then had to take me to her circle of friends just to double check to see if I was going to be a legitimate, in this field. And so it was like driving Miss Daisy around. She was Miss Daisy and I was Morgan Freeman. And I drove her from Nassau County on Long Island all the way out to Shirley, New York on Long Island, and Wantagh and Montauk. She knew all these people. That's because she was a member of the Rosicrucians. And so of the various circles of friends. And we went as far up into New Rochelle, New York, but my most memorable experience was we went to Brooklyn to a Haitian lady's house, and everybody was in there like whispering, like I guess I was Neo or something.
Right,
I didn't
right.
have a clue, but she left me in the kitchen with this lady, and the first thing she asked me to do was read her. And I didn't know what she meant by that. And so here I am in my early 20s out of college. I don't know what that means. She said, but you can read, man, read me. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. So she said, Grace, can you go out the and she closed the door and she put her hands on her hip and she says, let's see. So she got tea leaf and drank the tea with the leaf, and she showed me how to turn the cup to get the last little drainage. She says, read. That was from her. And I started seeing faces and numbers and things. And then she says, stop there. She got coffee. We did the same thing there. And she did some shells, but I didn't want to touch the shells because I knew that it was her stuff. So she gave me a set of tarot cards, and I started just saying what I felt. And then she told me about a dream, and I interpreted the dream, and went on and on and on. Then she grabbed my mother back in. She said, he's legit, but he just has to live his life first. He can't chase it. It will catch him at the right time. He's just got to live his life.
And
And that's how it all began.
I think that's the beauty of what, when you start opening gifts, and it's like a Christmas every day. But it does take a lot of work, and people don't realize that uh, this is a path. This is a life endeavor. This isn't just something casual for Charlotte, to be a
Mm-hmm.
trip. It's not for parlor games. This is
Right.
really a legitimate endeavor, but it is also very hard work. It doesn't come easy.
And you have to know what's your field and what isn't your field. When I worked in New Jersey, one of the owners of a store would send me all of these people, and I would go back out the store. Says that person needs psychological counseling. I'm not a licensed psychologist. You can't send that person to me, but you can make some money. I said, but the other person sitting in the room, she's a trained psychologist and she's licensed doing psychic readings. She needs that person.
Right.
And eventually those people came out and said, yeah, Steve, you're not supposed to send those people to him. You can get him in trouble.
Right.
So I would okay, every store that I worked out of, I would tell them, yes, I have these kind of gifts, but do not send me anybody. Do not take their money. And I have a standard, and I still live by it. I have many people who they can get very picky. I don't like what you're doing. It doesn't make sense for me in 2 minutes. So what I would do is give them their money, march them up to the counter, and say, this person is not comfortable with what's coming through me, which is okay. That's their opinion, but they can't come back to me again. Let them go to somebody else. And what would happen? They would go to all these other charlatans in the shop, get ripped off for thousands of dollars, and then come to me and say, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were the real deal. Can you help me? And I says, let me pray over it the next couple of days to see if I'm supposed to give you this information. And I'd wait for 3 days. Maybe sometimes I would fast. Sometimes I automatically knew, or sometimes, my mother and grandmother would say like, nope, I don't care how much money they got. You're not going to jail for that person.
Right.
Leave it
Right.
alone. So sometimes you can't chase the dollar. You can't do it.
No, you can't. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your integrity. And I look forward to getting out of our shelter in place, although we are going to hold hard standards for people to feel safe in resident essentials. Like, we'll get together and schedule your night of remembrance and maybe make it a Sunday afternoon remembrance,
Yeah, that's good.
something along those lines. But we'll end with that. Repeat for them how to get in touch with you.
Yes, you could email me at iam.circleofgrace with the number one at the end at gmail.com. Or you can call my cell phone number 505-220-2583 or my Skype number 505-349-4722. And 4722 starts to spell the word grace.
See, I told you.
Yeah.
My one thing that I love about astrology is once you do the layout of the chart, you get the numbers. 666, which is the devil's number, spells fox.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Foxy Devil. Yep.
Yeah, well, kind of like the news channel.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Anyway, my heart to yours, my dear. I love you immensely. I'll see you as soon as we can get together.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Looking
I love
forward to
you.
it. I love you too. Everybody have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in.
We'll talk with you all soon. Look forward to next week's. Bye.